multiple law enforcement sources have confirmed to KARE 11 that the shooter is a 23-year-old named Robin Westman. Robin formerly went by Robert, that's what we're being told, grew up in Richfield, and we've also learned that his mother had some connection to the school or church and worked there. That may be the connection between the shooter and that location. That's what law enforcement sources are telling us. Again, we have confirmed that the shooter in this case is named Robin Westman, and it was a 23-year-old.
Yeah, important new information there. AJ, thank you for that update. And a lot of people were asking, you heard reporters asking during the press conference if there was any connection there.
What was the connection?
Well, now that we know that there's a connection, we'll see where the investigation progresses.
It was supposed to be just another day. The light streamed through the stained glass windows of the chapel, painting the stone floor in a kaleidoscope of vibrant reds and blues. The sound of children's voices, soft, reverent, filled the air as they knelt in prayer, surrounded by the comforting hush of a familiar space. Parents watched from the pews, their gazes filled with anticipation for the start of the new school year. But the stillness was shattered. A loud bang echoed through the chapel, sending a shockwave of fear through the room. The children's prayers, once soft and calm, turned to screams. The parents, confused and desperate, scrambled to shield their children. Gunfire rang out again, followed by the frantic shuffling of footsteps. In the chaos, no one had time to understand what was happening. But the unmistakable sound of violence was undeniable. What kind of monster could tear apart the sanctity of a school mass? What twisted mind could strike at the heart of a church, a place of peace and worship, with no mercy? The children had come here for protection, for a day of new beginnings. How could something so horrifying happen in the sacred silence of a place they called home? Annunciation Catholic School had always been a beacon of calm in the quiet neighborhood of Minneapolis. The school, serving children from pre-kindergarten to 8th grade, was part of the larger Annunciation Catholic Church, a tight-knit community that many called home. The first day of school had passed without incident, and the atmosphere had been filled with the usual excitement of a new academic year. Children and parents gathered for Mass on the morning of August 27, 2025, their heads bowed in prayer. The service, which was set to begin at 8:15 a.m., was meant to mark the start of the year. The morning was serene, until the moment it all fell apart. The Westmans had been a familiar name around the church. Robin M. Westman, once Robert Paul Westman, had grown up attending Annunciation. His mother, Mary Grace Westman, had been a beloved parish secretary until her retirement in 2021. The family had been rooted in the very soil of this community, making the tragedy even harder to process. They had no reason to suspect that Robin, who had gone through life quietly, would become the face of such horror. As the community gathered in prayer, they had no way of knowing that their peace would be shattered. They had no way of knowing that someone who had walked these very halls would, just moments later, leave a path of destruction. It was a bright morning, with the warmth of summer still lingering in the air. The sounds of chatter and prayer filled the chapel as parents settled into their pews and children clung to their faith with wide-eyed enthusiasm. But around 8:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time, the familiar hum of church bells would soon be drowned out by the sound of gunfire. A man, dressed in black, stood outside the stained glass windows of the chapel. Without warning, he raised a semi-automatic rifle and began firing through the glass. The piercing sound of glass shattering was quickly followed by the deafening crack of the rifle. Screams erupted as chaos spread like wildfire. There was no way to predict it. Parents shielded their children, some throwing themselves to the floor as the sound of gunfire rang out again. The gunman fired a shotgun, then a pistol, each shot echoing in the hollowed-out chapel. But it didn't stop there. The shooter had planned this. They had come prepared. Outside, a series of wooden planks, 2x4s, had been nailed into place to barricade the doors, trapping anyone inside. The gunmen had cut off their escape. Panic swept through the chapel. Children dashed for cover, some hiding under pews, others running toward any exit they could find. The sound of K-9 units barking and police sirens soon overwhelmed the cacophony of gunshots. Within minutes, emergency responders flooded the area. But it was too late. The shooter had already taken aim and fired the deadly shots that would change everything. Casualties and victim stories. 2 children, both aged 8 and 10, lay dead in the wake of the shooting. Their lives, full of potential, snuffed out before they could truly begin. 17 others were injured, including 14 more children, some critically wounded. The scene was devastating: shattered bodies, bloodied clothes, and the sounds of the terrified still ringing in the ears of everyone who had survived. One of the most harrowing accounts came from a teacher, who had watched in horror as the children scrambled for cover. Some were physically injured, while others were emotionally shattered, their lives changed forever by the violence they had witnessed. This shooting was one of the deadliest of the academic year, a grim statistic that added yet another name to the growing list of school shootings in the United States. It was an attack that would remain in the memory of this community for years to come. Who is the shooter? Robin M. Westman. The name of the shooter was soon revealed to be Robin M. Westman, a 23-year-old from Richfield, Minnesota. His background was unremarkable. He had no significant criminal record, nothing to indicate that he was capable of such violence. But Robin wasn't just a man, he was a young person struggling with his identity. He had legally changed his name from Robert Paul Westman to Robin M. Westman in 2020, reflecting a personal transformation that most of his community hadn't fully understood. His mother, Mary Grace Westman, had worked for the church as a parish secretary until her retirement. She had once been known and loved by everyone in the community. But now, her son was a name that would forever be linked to tragedy. It was a painful truth that no one could escape. Manifesto and YouTube video. Shortly before the shooting, a chilling 11-minute video was uploaded to YouTube, a manifesto of sorts, where Robin could be seen giggling maniacally, holding firearms marked with disturbing symbols. The video contained hateful messages and references to other notorious mass shooters, including Adam Lanza and the Unabomber. In the video, Robin referenced a blueprint of the church and displayed a sense of mania and obsession. It was clear that he had planned this attack with cold, calculated precision. Law enforcement swiftly took down the video, but not before its contents were widely shared and scrutinized by the public. The FBI quickly launched an investigation, classifying the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Emergency response and reactions. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara condemned the attack, calling it incomprehensible. The grief in his voice was apparent, as he expressed how devastating it was for a place of faith and sanctuary to become the site of such violence. Political leaders, including Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, echoed this condemnation. Frey emphasized the importance of not just offering thoughts and prayers but also of addressing the underlying issues that led to this attack. Governor Tim Walz also spoke out, calling for justice and solidarity. The response from the community was swift. Religious leaders and the Pope expressed spiritual solidarity, offering prayers for the victims and their families. Families were supported through local resource centers set up to help them cope with the aftermath. Emotional and human perspective. One father, who had just picked up his child from the school, recounted how his son was spared from the gunfire, by what he called the luckiest broken arm in history. The child had broken his arm the day before the shooting, causing him to miss the service. Had it not been for that accident, he might have been one of the victims. The story was shared through tearful eyes, a reminder of how close the tragedy had come to touching everyone. The survivors, those who escaped the chaos, shared stories of trauma, of fear, but also of resilience. In the face of unimaginable horror, they had helped one another, offering comfort where there had been none. Aftermath and broader significance. This shooting marked the 146th school shooting in the United States of 2025. It was part of an ongoing epidemic of gun violence that had plagued the nation for years. In the wake of the attack, debates over gun control and school security became louder, with citizens calling for a change, an end to the madness that had already claimed so many lives. The investigation was ongoing, with the FBI, ATF, and local law enforcement examining every detail, from Robin's digital footprint to the premeditated nature of the crime. And as the days passed, the dialogue surrounding prevention intensified. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Could earlier intervention, better mental health services, or stronger gun laws have stopped Robin from carrying out his deadly plan? These were questions that would continue to echo throughout the community and the nation. What makes a familiar face, a child of the community, now forever stained in tragedy? The question hung in the air, unanswered. No one could understand the depths of the pain Robin Westman had caused. What drove him to carry out such a horrific act against the children of a community that had loved him? Was it a breakdown of mental health? Was it the result of something deeper, something that had been festering beneath the surface for years? One thing was certain, the echoes of that day would never fade. The scars left on the community, on the victims, and on those who survived would last a lifetime. As we close this chapter, we are reminded that violence has many faces, and the story isn't over. It's a reflection of a broken system, one that continues to claim more lives every year. It's a call to action, a plea for change. A plea for safety. And a plea for the lives of children to be spared from this senseless violence. If you feel moved by this story, share, like, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that will make you question everything.